Okay. The Pellin Credo, ground rules for the Peter Fleming Forum. The ground rules in the Pellin Credo are designed to support a safe, nourishing environment. 1. We ask that you come to the meeting with a clear head, free of the influence of drink and drugs. 2. In any Pellin setting, you keep control of the pace and depth of your sharing. You may pass or say no to any suggestion. Your no will be accepted and not judged or analyzed. No means no. 3. Even though the meetings are recorded, we ask that people respect the confidentiality of those present and do not share anything they heard outside the meeting. 4. In Pellin work, we have a strict no gossip rule. No gossip means we do not talk about anyone who is not present, even in a pleasant way.
Okay, thank you. Sorry I was a little bit late. So we'll start off with name and location. Sounds like something you do if you're captured by the enemy in war, right? Rank and number or something. Okay, I'm Peter and I'm in Norfolk in England. Johnny?
Hello, Johnny Avila, located in Los Angeles, California, United States. That's the only information I can give you, sir.
Nikki.
You can torture me with love and I'll give you lots of information.
Nikki?
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm in Wimbledon, London. Temporarily blue sky. Thank you.
Okay. Cynthia?
Cynthia, and I'm in Kankakee, Illinois.
Mary in England?
I'm Mary, and I'm on the south coast of the UK.
Vic?
I'm Vic Flagg. I'm in Abbotsford, British Columbia, an hour out of Vancouver. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
I'm Elizabeth, and I'm in Eugene, Oregon.
Mary?
I'm Mary, and I'm raised in Rito Beach, Mexico.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. What the pardon me. What the topic today is, and to some extent, this one's very much for me. It's on authority and the pendulum. We've been spending a lot of time on our concept of authority over recent sessions. And I guess the pendulum is probably the best known of the Pellin tools. Probably most talked about. Probably the two best known of the Pellin tools, and different for different people, I know. The tools that people hold on to are the pendulum and passive listening. And that's a huge generalization, but yeah, just sharing that with you. Anyway, authority and the pendulum in relation to politics and therapy. My first academic study, in fact, my only degree, University of Sydney in Australia, where I grew up. And that was in economics and political science. And it is it's quite a thing in Australia, or was then. I imagine it's still around. Evening students. And an evening student was someone essentially who went to university after work in the evening. And the university was set up for that, always. So got a job and went to uni at night. you're an evening student. It was life because you weren't a university on campus. You didn't have that sort of student life. You had a job, and mine was in the civil service, called the Commonwealth Public Service. Because Australia's, like Canada, a federal system, and America is a federal system. They got the, Australia's Washington is Canada, Canberra. I was in Sydney, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I was a person that, people had their eye on. You don't realize it when you're 17 and a half and you've got a job. You just know you're 17 and a half and you got a job. So I was placed in a number of situations where, well, just a kid, I was close to people who had a lot of power. I'd be a junior assistant to a minister or some cabinet minister, something like that. So on an academic level, and in terms of that career, which lasted till I left Australia, which was 6 years. I was 6 years in the civil service. As soon as and of course, being an evening student, it took you longer to get it. It was a sort of 5-year degree rather than a 3 or 4 year degree. But in the meantime, you're building a substantial career. It was a particular, almost on a professional level, it was like being an apprentice or something. Looking back on it, it was a good system. But, a system you grow up in, you just take it for granted. The reason I'm putting that background in, then my memory links in terms of my, and bring that fast forward to today. I grew up in Australia and was part of the government service when Australia was struggling to try and get rid of something called the White Australia policy, which is just something that was, in a very ordinary way, accepted. The only immigrants to Australia would be white people. Plus the hidden, because I left Australia in 1958 and hardly went back, just personal circumstances. I didn't dislike the country. I had a very happy upbringing. I was a surfer, Australia's life's a beach, okay? The part of me that, and I guess we'd say it with some pride or snobbishness, but I think it's the case that all the eucalypt trees came from Australia, okay? So what is iconic in California, you from us guys. Fast and plus at that time, the horrendous treatment of the Aboriginal people, the indigenous people of Australia. A very, very good movie called The Rabbit Proof. So, that was it. And that was something that the country was not conscious of. Australians are friendly and warm and left-wing and all of that. Long left-wing tradition. However, there's a sort of cliche, scratch an Australian and find a racist. my father, this is putting in memory links and background, but and I've done this on my Facebook, but I also want to do it here. The reason which is a decision, really, it's a decision that Pellin is going to be much more political from both practice and theory. So I'm putting in the background to that decision. Which, that was my dad, who was a school teacher, primary school teacher, quite a modest man in his own way. But I might have told this before, but it's a story I do want to tell more than once. But Jim Fleming was the leading choir. He could get kids to sing, and he was brilliant at it. And it must have been something like 1946 or 47, because it would have been after the Second World War. There's a very big jamboree in Sydney, National Scout Jamboree. And they wanted my dad to lead the singing, and he refused because he said, there are no Aboriginal children there. I will not lead the singing. Public statement, it wasn't in the press or anything like that, but it was a very clear statement. So that's my background to what I have no doubt will go down as the time of George Floyd. And I guess politics has always been an interest for me. American politics has always been interested. I sort of say jokingly that the Democratic Party of America is the team. So I can bore you with statistics and numbers and people running in CA16. Okay, running in CA16. That would relate to the 16th House of Representatives seat in the state of California. So bringing together therapy and politics is something that's been part of Pellin all the way along. Mainly a very practical way, how we look at the nature of the therapeutic relationship, and we use what we call transparency, which aims to create an equality with the people who are delivering the service and the people who are receiving the service. And we had those values and that concept of transparency way, way back, right at the beginning. And that came from, some political interests, because from those interests, I've always had an intense interest in democracy, and the statement, Lord Acton's statement, that power tends to corrupt and absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. And therapists have a great power. And professionals in the helping professions have a great deal of power. And they sort of, we're in the helping profession, so we're above all that. We're trying. So in some unspoken way, that statement doesn't apply to us. People in the helping professions can, with the rest of humankind, that's a fact. We are of the same species. We can be corrupted in the same way. And when you look at I mean, there's always, I don't know what the statements are in, what the names are in America, and America's so huge, there'll be a name in New York and there'll be a different name in California. But, you know, just about everyone in England knows who Baby P, I'm right, aren't I, Nikki? Yeah, thanks, Mary. Yeah, everyone knows, you know, knows who Baby P is, just like that. And, you know, Baby P died because of child abuse. And there was a huge investigation. And you get those situations, and almost go into any social care system or social work system. And, you know, there'll be one or two cases and everyone knows those names. Here with Baby. And that is systems, not technology, not taking in the persona gap, not taking in power tends to corrupt. You know, babies die, children die, sexual abuse happens. And of course, now we have the, yeah.
I'm just a bit confused. Like, what's the relationship between the tools you just mentioned and?
Well, we define authority as, you know, work and professional standing, okay? So when we get into authority, the issue of power surface. Doesn't matter whether we are, where we are. You know, Silicon Valley. You know, the trouble they're in because they don't want to listen to feedback. They don't want to look at their persona gap, the difference between the way they perceive themselves and the way the world or the nation perceives them. So, I mean, to answer your question, I guess I don't know yet. To some extent, I'm still struggling with this because I want to, and probably I'm being a bit very general about it. But I guess I wanted to, in time, be a clear statement that there is both, and I'm struggling with the words. I didn't have this intention before George Floyd, and I'm not the only, you know, life had been changed by that from a long way. So bringing the tools quickly, the pendulum, and of course the life force will also really relate to this, but the way the pendulum comes in, the pendulum gives us a chance to make clear and accurate decisions about where we stand about politics and the nature of government when those things move our passions, okay? And when those, when the political thing, the government thing, the way the state is functioning, when that's us personally. You know, I'm still locked down there. You're in Mexico and you can't, that's the effect of the state. Let alone take that into, you know, Brixton, England, Brixton or South Central LA or to New York, people who have generations and generations of racial and racial prejudice, lack of opportunities because of race. Those things engage us in a way that authority with our emotions, pendulum swings all over the place. And you know, if you look, and in terms of sort of the pendulum and the relation of politics and therapy, I mean, how, you know, I say this as someone, you know, who knows the life of Martin Luther King well enough to know that he was not a saint by any means. But how did he, and this is where I would say that Martin Luther King had an understanding of the pendulum and it gave him an advantage over Malcolm X, who didn't, okay? I mean, that's just using almost those two indelibly influential lives as sort of examples. Yeah, Cynthia.
Well, I was just thinking of something that actually I had been involved in years ago, and when the whole thing in the United States for marriage equality, and I remember, I mean, I was actually a lawyer then, but I remember that that there were a few organizations. There was Lambda Legal, and well, they're still around, and the HRC Human Rights Campaign, but they specifically were telling people, you know, don't go out and sue on your own, wait, and we're going to do it in a very methodical fashion. And they got, you know, and there were people who got very angry about it, but I was thinking about doing that from the calm and doing that from the calm, and it eventually worked. They were waiting until they had the right court, they had the right case, and they basically told everybody else, and most people did, you know, don't do anything, we don't want any bad precedents, you know, just wait for us, and we know what we're doing. And it seemed to relate to what you were talking about.
Yeah, and in that case, you could say it worked because how, I'm just sort of using the tools to, no, I want to put that different way. I'm using historical incidents to illustrate the tools rather than using the Pellin concept to explain away the historical moments. They're two quite different approaches. But staying with that one, yeah, I guess they really stayed in the middle of the pendulum. But I think if be patient, wait is a very dangerous message. And I don't think, and I would speculate that the threat to authority that gay marriage represented didn't touch the conservatives or the people who were opposed to it in quite the same way. It sort of affected their values, but it didn't affect the value of their real estate. It didn't affect who was going to get a promotion at work. because I don't think that approach would not work now. And maybe it's as simple as the church is not as powerful as the cops in their time in history. The church did not have the power to go out and physically intimidate people, let alone kill them, but formalize the statement. The police institutions have for many years had the power to do that.
Oh, they did with gay people, very
But
much so. They did with gay people. And in fact, one of the things that happened in part of the, when they were even just now in, with some of the protests and stuff, and they were telling the police, they specifically attacked a lot of gay bars that were actually out giving water and stuff and medicine to, and they would specifically go for the gay bars too. So yeah, no,
Yeah,
police
yeah,
are
no,
intimidated.
no,
I mean,
you're
the
right.
difference is that it's something that you can hide. I mean, and that's the main thing. You can be quiet and people may not know. Whereas if you're black, there's no way you can hide it. So I mean, I think that's the big difference.
Yeah. And the statement I just made was just wrong. Sorry about that, because the hate crimes and the shootings, the mass murders, they were there. I was just looking at the sort of difference in threat to authority around it. There was something about the, I think, degree of threat. I'm in some way was different. There's something different in it. Maybe the whole slavery thing is what makes it all different. That was. I think even now, in a moment, Mary, I think even now, with everything being said and said and said and said over and over and over again, I don't think the amount of time slavery was in place is still not getting through to people some way. Mary, sorry.
Yes, sorry, I'm aware I'm a bit tired today, but you said something important a few minutes ago. I don't know if I remember it well enough to ask about it, but you said, I'm not applying the tools to the historical incidents, I'm doing something else. And I didn't understand, and it sounded important.
No, it is important. And I don't, after all these years, I still haven't nailed down an easy way to say it. But let me try and say it again and then give some examples of what I mean. We are sort of embedded in history, and that's really come more so, as we're sort of formally making Pellin a school of thought and practice that simply combines politics and therapy. That's a first statement about it. And I've never said it that directly before, or had that intention, or been that open about it, okay? So anyway, the history stuff's always been there. As it is with as it was with Freud, as it was with Jung and Bettelheim, a whole lot of Erickson, a whole lot of other people. But what they tended to do was come in and say, I will explain to you why Mahatma Gandhi was the way he was. My school of, this is Erik Erikson, my school of thought and practice will explain Gandhi. Or my school of, or Freud, I will explain Leonardo da Vinci, okay? And I think that's just absurd, and extraordinarily arrogant. But they weren't trying to be arrogant. It was just sort of the way they did it. And it's a bit the reason we have the truth line, and we've only got a little bit of the whole truth. you know, don't come and use your school of psychotherapy to explain Gandhi or Dr. King or Nelson Mandela or Vincent van Gogh or William Shakespeare. And from my side, because there's another bit of the authority in politics and therapy that I want to get at, I think we end up looking silly. And there's a certain thing, oh, the psychoanalysts, they'll psychoanalyze him, or psychobabble. You know, that way a particular field of work can be really easily sort of kissed off and easily put down. You know, words like, oh, here come the shrinks to explain away Churchill. In England, the way that slur, I guess, in our around our field of work, psychiatrists for years were called trick cyclists. It was a sort of clever, sort of upper class English put down. Oh, you're a trick cyclist. And within the medical profession, that was a real put down. We'll tolerate you, but you don't really belong here. My view of back of the farm, to use that expression, Johnny, we got a great deal to offer. We've got a great deal of wisdom and human insight to offer. But because we insist on coming on with this odd sort of arrogance, we leave ourselves open to be mocked. Peter Sellers or Woody Allen, it's easy to develop a humorous character, a bumbling person who is a psychiatrist, okay? Vic?
It's interesting as I listen to everything that's been said. You talked about Gandhi and about the arrogance of whoever who sort of claims to explain Gandhi or Jung or whatever, right? And I go back to a time I came into the unit, the activator unit, met David Pellin when I was, I think 22. And when I was I was involved with the drugs in the summer of my 20th year and got off, and around the year 20 or year 21, I had an experience that relates to what you're saying. I was involved in a lot of really heady stuff, right? Occultism and all kinds of stuff, right? And
that was a moment in the city of Vancouver, okay?
And at that rate, I was never, looking back now, I was never going to get my feet planted on the ground, right? And I mean, the joke in my essay, I said, I was working on cosmic consciousness, right? And so, who could tell me anything, right? Anyhow, I was a genuine bona fide seeker, 1960s seeker, you could say. And I was walking around with Gandhi's book, and I might get a little choked up about this because what you've said has touched me deeply. Gandhi's book, My Experiments with Truth, I think it was called. His
I'm reading that right now.
Right.
I can show you my copy.
Here's some serendipity for all of us, maybe. So I'm walking around with I'm a genuine seeker, as I said, and I really was. I can say that much about myself. There's a lot of other negative things I can say, but that much I can say. And I'm walking around and I'm reading Gandhi, and I think it was really I read the whole little book, but also on the cover he said, and coming back to what you said, Peter, and what we've been trying to touch on was about the chalk line, what we call the truth line. And what Gandhi said there was, if you want to find I almost can get it perfectly. If you want to find the truth, you have to be as humble as the dust, as the ground you're walking on. And I remember a distinct moment I call this spiritual. I remember a distinct moment when that came into my mind with a tremendous conviction and enabled me to let go of a whole pile of stuff that I had, right? Because the other stuff was full of arrogance. It was full of arrogance. You know, and I'm going to be really personal here. I mean, one of the things that was said was, this person was saying, you know, the story about Jesus is a fable, and it was said in an arrogant way. And I suddenly realized, who the hell are you to tell me about Jesus Christ? You know, who are you to tell? Who are you? And Gandhi's thought was, you know, if you want to find the truth, you have to be as humble as the dust. Now, the reason I bring this up is that was not too long before the minister friend came along to me and invited me to go over and meet David Pellin. And when I went into the unit, I look back now and I see that the Gandhi moment for me prepared me to be open to and receive what David Pellin was saying and teaching. So when you talk about this arrogance of people, and I'll try to close off what I'm saying here. When you talk about this arrogance of authority, whatever authority, and we all have to live with authority, right? You're kind of double-edged dagger, right? But who is other people to say what Gandhi should mean to me, or what Carl Jung should mean to me, or what Winston Churchill should mean to me? Winston Churchill became very, very important to me in another different way. I had a Churchill moment, I had a Gandhi moment, right? So who are the people who should say who those people should be to us? Call us the common person, whatever, right? I had that moment, and it was a life-changing moment. It was really a life-changing moment. I'm reading Gandhi's words. I was touched. And then I went and I met David Pellin. It changed my life. And so who are the people that have this arrogance that should be able to say, this is the way this should be for you? And so that's how I connected what you're saying. You know, forgive me if I get a bit choked up here, because this is back to some very powerful moments. I've got all of Gandhi's biographies. And very, very powerful moments for me, you know, and I'll just round this up really quickly, you know. When I saw Attenborough's movie, Gandhi, you know, there were so many wonderful things about it. But there was one gigantic thing that was missing that because I knew a little bit about Gandhi. I mean, I knew a little bit about this person because I tried to follow teachings. And I said, why in your movie, which is 3 hours long, did you never show everybody that Gandhi got up every morning at 3 and spent 5 hours in meditation? Why didn't you tell people that? Because everybody thinks he was the saint, and he was, you know, whatever, the greatness of the man. But you never told us that. Now, if a person got up for 5 hours every morning and meditated on an orange, I'm quite sure it would have an effect in their life. And I always felt that Attenborough missed that point. Anyhow, and so I'm coming back to authority again. And I love Attenborough and I love the movie. But I mean, I knew Gandhi, and I said, look, you didn't tell us that this man every day spent 4 hours in the morning or 5 in meditation. That's going to change anybody. You didn't tell us that. You know, and all these millions of people that went to the movie come walking out thinking, woo, but you didn't tell us this hard, practical reality. And again, I come back and I'm blabbing away here, but Pellin, meditation meant something to Pellin. Yeah. And so all of that maybe is a counterbalance to this arrogance of authority. That's maybe I'll round it off there. And again, I apologize for being long-winded. I hope that is a significant something there.
Well, I love you bringing up the book because I'm reading it right now. And I mean, just before we started this, that I read it years ago, but I can't remember. And I'm reading it again, partly as a background of this thing I want to do about moving Pellin into politics. And I won't try and find it here, and because it's a long bit, but he's in South Africa, and he'd just been part of a team that had successfully solved a legal problem, okay? And he said, and you know, I literally read it an hour and a half ago, and he said, I learned then what the law was about. It was about bringing people together. And then he said, that's what I did in my 20-year legal career. I had forgotten he had a 20-year legal career, okay? And I mean, there, you know, a profession that is sort of based on adversarial relationships. And, you know, at that time he was a young guy, he was in his 20s, I think. And he said, you know, I learned that what the law was about bringing people together, not enabling them to fight. Yeah, Mary.
Well, this is an intuitive thing, so I don't know if it exactly fits what we were saying about the way round you look at things. But I was just thinking that mostly white people hold the narrative of how you look at things in the world. And so white people tell it, not only white people, but a lot of white, oh, somebody waiting, sorry, would tell us what the narrative is about black people. And what I'm getting at is an experience I had in a movement for Black Lives Matter Zoom meeting. And there's something about the way that black people leading the meeting and saying gently and calmly in the way they did it, I don't think they said it as a sentence, this is a Black-led meeting and you are here to learn from us about our experience. And that felt a bit like that was analogous to what you were trying to say. You've been talking about what Pellin doesn't want to do, right? About looking at the world. And that seemed to me a bit analogous, because why was that so surprising to me? Because I'm not usually in that situation to be learning from the holders of the experience about, you know, because I'm not black, I don't have that experience. So it's like, it seemed to me in what you was trying to explain, there was something about not looking down and explaining through the eyes of their theory, but something about respect, something about listening and respect.
I think that's right, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I just lost a major element in this, which I had very clearly years and years ago. One of the other approaches is reducing everything to my point of view, okay? It's reducing everything, it's reductionism. And that's reducing everything to my point of view.
Here, baby. He came in. He went to the front door and was looking for you. Bailey, I'm here.
I've let you in, Stacey, and Nash has just come in as well. So, Stacey, oh, you're muted now. Okay, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, so instead of reducing everything, and this is where just going way back, I'm just remembering, I'm trying very hard to remember why I didn't like Dave Pellin at first, okay? But I didn't, I really didn't. He got on my nerves and he went after me. Then because my job depended on it, I went to one of these lectures. I signed up to these lectures. And he drew the truth line, okay, on a blackboard and said, we only have this little bit. And that was it. I mean, he had me from there on. Because I had, I'd read a lot, I'd studied with a lot of the really big names. I think I've said another time, because they all came through Vancouver, because, you know, Vancouver is the greatest city in the world. As Vancouverites like to say. That's what we say, eh? And he was a scruffy guy who I didn't sort of like, you know, I didn't feel we were similar or something. And it was just, wow. No one else had said that. Everyone else had reduced what the human experience was to what they had. But with a certain sort of arrogance, at least someone doing that from a religious perspective sort of owns it. You know, okay, nothing will work out for you if you don't find Jesus, and I'm saying that. But in my field, I feel the arrogance is more subtle, and it reduces everything to, you know, I'll reduce everything to contribution training, rather than saying contribution training just the little bit of it, and studying the lives of the great and the wise can help us understand what we're trying to do with our material, rather than us use our material to explain who they are. And I come in it from a somewhat different place as well, that from an intellectual point of view, it makes our field of work, this is harsh, but, you know, I'm claiming my years in, okay, to be a harsh critic of my own field. It makes us look quite sloppy intellectually, I feel. And it's okay, I'm going to come in and with contribution training and the life forces, I'm going to tell you what William Shakespeare's all about, okay? You know, hello, you know, wake up a little bit, you know, apart from anything else. You know, there are, I don't know, 400 books a year for 400 years written on William Shakespeare. So whatever the maths around that are. And yeah, Elizabeth.
So, first of all, tell me if you can't hear me clearly. Some people have been having trouble.
No, you're real clear.
Good. So, what it seems to me from my limited experience with Pellin and my limited experience with politics is that contribution training's strength as related to politics is not in explaining people, but in explaining strategy. And Cynthia's example really keys into it. And, you know, in Pellin, we know that not every tool gets used the same way every time, but using the pendulum to stay in calm was something these legal organizations did as a strategy to choose their timing to overturn unjust laws through cases. And, you know, that's not explaining away a person or a historical moment, but it is outlining, here's a tool in the box for strategy we could apply elsewhere if it is appropriate. And I think that's where the value is. The other thought I've had is that one of the big basic connections I could see sort of in your discussion, especially early on when you were talking about the social work cases, is that the threat to authority that comes when people say your contribution is not, is something that, unless you are very self-aware, will set your pendulum swinging if that's directed at you. That's all.
No, that's a really, really good. That's clearer than I can put it across. Okay, I've been struggling. Yeah, Vic.
I just want to connect with what Elizabeth was just saying there. A moment again in the activator unit. I remember David saying something, and this is not something, I've said in my essay that I think we can get Peter's comment on this. David was one of his geniuses was making pithy sayings, P-I-T-H-Y, pithy sayings that were packed with meaning. And I remember something that he said. Again, with his, with that big push he would put into it. And I think it connects with what Elizabeth was saying. She talked about strategy. David said, and Peter, I'd be interested if you remember him saying this. David said, don't mock social strata. Don't mock social strata. Now, the interesting thing was, we'll go back
I
to
missed
this.
the word there. Don't
mock, M-O-C-K, don't mock social strata. Now, the interesting thing there is you go back to the time we're talking about, 69, 70, everybody was mocking social strata. Everybody was attacking the establishment and attacking authority. So the interesting thing here, in my opinion anyways, is that, David Pellin was not a rabble-rouser. David Pellin, David Pellin was fearless. He was fearless, but he was not a rabble-rouser. That is interesting to me. And I come to what Elizabeth said, and Pellin would say, "Don't mock social strata." I was sitting there as this 23-year-old that was a rebel against everything and had a lot of ill thoughts about authority. And here's this guy saying, and we already knew that he'd had his problems with authority, the very things Peter's talking. And yet Pellin had the balanced, nuanced understanding to say, don't mock social strata. Now that was really interesting. And I connect it with Elizabeth's using of the word strategy. Choosing your moments, balance, wisdom. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's true of great people in general. They're sort of full of contradictions and anomalies. And, he wasn't a rabble-rouser. Did not really support or condone sort of the extreme radicalism of those times. And at the same time, he was developing this material that was an absolute revolutionary attack on the whole field within which he was working. Because, just to come on to the one thing about authority, he was, I've done different things with, and I have taken them more politically, and now I'm deliberately, I'm playing with words like a therapeutic approach to politics and a political approach to therapy. That, one of the things that the whole social adjustment movement is about, on one level, is trying to force people the way to face the fact that people are denied authority and denied the opportunities for employment and justice and simple well-being that will give them the chance to have a fulfilled life. And, we sort of bunch a whole lot of that under our concept of authority. But, it's a terrible thing to say. And, I'm not an American, I don't live there. but children who go to school hungry aren't going to learn that well. You know, that's just a fact. And, you know, that's almost if you keep kids from learning well and doing well educationally, then you're going to be able to dominate them politically because they're not going to be able to fulfill themselves. Let alone if you feed them poisoned water, it's going to have an effect on their brain. And that's Flint, Michigan. I mean, it's a fact.
Excuse me, Peter.
Yeah.
Nikki needs a reminder about the time. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I think this will run long, this thing. You know, I guess I don't want to present as if I have it all together. I don't. But I mean, I do want to sort of find a way to simply sort of follow up on the thing. You said, Elizabeth, that, you know, we're not telling people who they are, who they should be. And when we do that, as a field of human endeavor and as a field that, you know, we've got a really solid intellectual history with great minds in it. And yet we haven't had the sense to put together a strategy that will mean we're highly respected. And that's a bit dumb. And I mean, this is the almost internal politics of my profession. And that is they don't look in the mirror. You know, the thing I've been pushing here, you know, looking in the mirror, we glance out the window and walk out the door. You know, so Freud didn't look in the mirror and sort of take on that some people might see him as being a bit too arrogant in terms of how he was going to analyze and define their lives and who they were. And then this is just sort of background, and as the work develops further, you know, it ends up being there's a lot of sort of sloppy reasoning in this field. A lot of sloppy metaphors like boundaries, or, you know, my reading of it, Freud got it wrong. Oedipus didn't know that she was his mother. That was the tragedy. He didn't sort of set about falling in love with his mother. He didn't know this woman was his mother. If I've got my Greek literature right. So, you know, so and there are things in my field called boundaries. There has to be a boundary between the professional and the client. And that just gets, you know, it can't be questioned. And if you question it, you're unethical. But, you know, a boundary is a sort of one-dimensional physical line between territories. The relationships between people, it's a rather sloppy metaphor. And that's where David Pellin just grabbed me, because, you know, Vic was just saying he was bombastic and yelled and shook his finger at you. But underneath all that, this was a very, very vigorous mind. Very vigorous mind. Mary.
Peter, I just a couple of things. One is that it might be confusing for newer people that Victor used the word authority to mean the establishment, I believe, in what he was saying, which is a bit different from the, you know, it's different from the way we're using authority. So I just mentioned that because that's part of the topic today, authority. And I just wondered if it might, I don't quite know how to say it, I feel a bit embarrassed, but I feel like this is interesting, but we could end up with not being clear about the tools and how they relate to each other.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll do that. Thank you. Yeah, I guess, you know, we come in and out of the words a particular way David used them, the way we use them. But as I said earlier, I'm not that clear about this yet. You know, this is work in progress for sure. But to put it simply, in the way it started was me, well, as you know, wanting to develop something called the Pellin lift, which I'm still working on in terms of the coronavirus. And then George Floyd came in on top of that, and wanting to find a way that the Pellin tools, particularly the pendulum, can help people understand how to be efficient and effective in political demonstrations. And it's, you know, the time to fish, there's a time to cut bait, there's a time to be quiet and very passive, and there's another time to yell and put up barricades. And the pendulum can, and they're decisions, and the pendulum can help with those decisions. The pendulum can also help with, we can get into group highs where one person's high just feeds on another, feeds on another, feeds on another. And one of the things that David said, if you want to control someone, just get their pendulum swinging. And, you know, you can see, and you can see it in some of the young people, refusing to be provoked, you know, being strong, being there, being present, but they're not going to be provoked. And of course, the opposition, well, you know, provoke us into violence, and then you can put us down. And, you know, in the civil rights movement, when the young people, when the teenagers and the school children went on demonstrations, as I've said here before, they dressed up okay. They wore their Sunday best. They could sing, but they couldn't shout. They were totally disciplined. And if you see footage of that now, you know, it's sort of, at times, gloves. You know, girls in gloves and stockings. And of course, now you've got ripped jeans. It's a different time. But if you can combine the two, there's a similar sense of discipline. And that's an innate understanding of the pendulum. And, you know, the great politicians have an innate understanding of the pendulum. And again, I want to say, our pendulum doesn't describe them, but their political wisdom helps us develop the theory of the pendulum. Now, if, you know, the authority used the word, the way we use the word, which is, you know, the structure of our accomplishments, the authority of gay marriage, you know, coming from the Supreme Court of America, you know, that was the way you described the strategy, Cynthia. That was really powerfully put together. And if I've got it right, two attorneys who, you know, one was a staunch Democrat and the other one was a staunch Republican. And they went to the High Court. And I guess you can almost feel, because the pendulum is not necessarily appearances, but what's going on inside us. Now, if you can imagine the pendulum of, people standing outside the Supreme Court, waiting for that law, to come down from on high, and then success. I mean, there'd be a whole lot of pendulum swings in there. And of course, one of the things we've got with the pendulum is it's okay if you get depressed and you feel hopeless and you've got doubts and, you feel your work is meaningless in the great scheme of things. If it's just a low on the pendulum, understand it as a low on the pendulum. And that can be extraordinarily helps with strategy.
There's an old saying, Peter, about lows in the pendulum, that this too shall pass.
Yes, exactly.
Highs and lows. My sponsor tells me when I'm really high, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And when I'm really low, this too shall pass.
Yeah. That's all about the pendulum. Yeah, it's all about the pendulum.
And my brother's the Iceman. He's always center. He never gets riled or happy. He's always just dead center. But he pushes other people's buttons. He's a stinker.
Okay. Johnny, do you want to come in?
Sure. How you guys doing? I'm just soaking up everyone's information. It may not make sense what I'm about to tell you. It may piss you off, but here we go. So, rabbit-proof fence. So rabbits are non-native to Australia. So, right? They're non-native to Australia. Eucalyptus trees are non-native to Californians. And so they brought the eucalyptus trees to Californians to build a railroad, Iron Horse, go across the United States, find out wood no good, Australian wood no good. And that a eucalyptus tree will poison the ground around it so it doesn't have any competition. So this is just in nature. So it's not a white man, and that's not a black man, it's not a woman. It's just, that's just nature, that we're gonna go across the world and take over, native or non-native. And at some point, when does it become native? So I get all that, but I keep going back to this one thing that I've been studying that's been helping me out, because the best thing that ever happened to me was losing my ego. You know what I mean? So all those awards and all that stuff, and look at me, I've accomplished this. Now you better listen to me because I know everything. Because it's all bullshit. It just literally comes back down to codependency. Because, I mean, it's like, well, I need to use all these tools if I took care of the source of the seed, like get to the root of the problem. And to me, for myself is, and I think that's where I relate with everyone is, yeah, you can mess with somebody if you're not codependent. You can push someone's buttons and you can swing their pendulum, right? If I know where your goat is at, I know where to get to your goat. So don't tell people where your goat is. So that goes back to discernment, or goes back to, all right, people with goodwill, those are the tools that help me. All right, you're goodwill people. All right, cool. I can literally don't have to bring my ego in. But for me, it's like codependency, because when we're talking about arrogance and all these other things, that's just projections by other people that are projecting onto this. And then how do you respond to that? Well, I'm going to use the pendulum tools to be like, all right, that's your projection. That's not me. You think I'm this white, blue-eyed devil. I'm not, because the first thing I grew when I was a kid was 4 pumpkin plants from 4 seeds. I got $2 bills. And on the back of that $2 bill is the Declaration of Independence. Declaration of Independence was signed by people. I mean, yes, the rules, the law, the thing of everyone being created equal, that was fine, but it was only for everyone, but if you're a woman, non-native, or a slave. At the same time, it was a start. At the same time, it's bullshit. So for me, when I taught history, and I learned this thing about power, and I was like, well, wait a second, the greatest library in the world was from Babylon. And then this group took that group, Israel took this group took that. And it's just, I always talked about it's an exchange of power, right? So what did the feminist group really get? All right, so now you got all this power, but now you have a bunch of guys committing suicide that are good. You know what I mean? So you got this unnatural balance going on. So this lady, and that's what I love about the Black Lives Movement going on, is because this lady kind of said it best. She said, it's not a black or white thing. And we need to end that black and white thing, because all it does is just restart the shit all over again. That's in my own words. But it's a humanity versus hate. That's basically it. Because if a bunch of aliens showed up on the planet right now, we'd be a bunch of humans, right? Because during 9/11, all of a sudden, nobody was Mexican, black, white, Puerto Rican. We're all Americans. Human nature. So I always go back to codependency. That's the negative seed. And how do we deal with that? I believe, and that's where, Elizabeth, she explained it so, where did she go? Elizabeth, let me see, did she leave? I can't get where did she go? Did she leave? Oh yeah, Elizabeth. Okay, I had to fix my screen. Like, you're so articulate. You said what was in my heart. I was like, oh my God, she's speaking from my soul. You know what I mean? And I think that's the universal connection with all of us, is that you're saying that I'm feeling. And I think that's why it comes down to humanity versus hate. And once I learned about my own codependency and those tools that I could use to develop it, I can now just, I don't know. It's like, if you have enough of love inside your own seed, you don't need to do all this extra stuff. But anyways, I just want to thank everybody, because that's what I got from everybody. That's what I collected. That's the goal that I got. So thank you for listening.
Mary, do you want to come in? Okay.
Which Mary were you speaking to?
Mary Stapleton.
No, I'm fine, thank you, Peter. I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nasha, hi.
Peter, she might possibly have gone away, because she said she was here, but she actually wanted to talk to you and me after the meeting, if you can stay on. So
Sure.
she may have gone away for a moment.
Okay. Well, let me just, do you want to come in, Stacey?
Sure. This is really interesting about the everything. It's just really interesting, and I'm just trying to absorb it. I missed, the first half, so I didn't hear the topic. But politics and therapy together, that's interesting. Because I believe the tribe should take care. I'm a socialist, a Democrat. I believe the tribe should take care of the community, the individual, which takes a village, like Hillary Clinton's book, and to raise a child. And it's not just, the family. It's not just you're on your own, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, I think that's bullshit. Like, to quote Johnny. But it's, I don't know, my kids, I remember, I don't know if I deprived them of food by having my classroom open. I let them go on the computer early in the morning at 7:30 while I prepped. And they were supposed to be eating breakfast, and maybe they skipped breakfast to go on the computer, little rascals. I didn't even think to ask. But if I had thought of that, I would have had snack time in my classroom, because I think it is important that kids don't come to school hungry. In America, most of us feed our kids. Low-income kids get free lunch and free breakfast, and sometimes that's the only meal they get. And when school's off, they're kind of SOL. That's why it's good schools year round. And that's it.
Johnny.
So for myself, I am a libertarian, just to throw it out politically, just because I was on both sides, and then like I believe you do have to work for some stuff. I believe it's not to the right, it's not to the left for myself. And what it is I've seen so much food being wasted. I'm that teacher that grew food for the kids. But the difference was you're going to grow your own garden with me. I'm going to provide you the space, and you're going to grow the garden. Now you're going to waste less food. Hence goes back to I grew up with victory gardens, and so for the older generation in Britain, you understand victory gardens. And so what it is when something's given to you, I see so much food in LA wasted because people don't know where it comes from. So for myself, I think that's where the pendulum comes in, is that balance of, yeah, we're going to help out the community, but we're going to provide the opportunity for you to work it. So then because that's what I was telling the kids. I said, hey, look, I said, the reason why government doesn't like farmers is because we're independent. What are you going to do? I have food, I have friends, I have shelter. And that means I have love. So now if I have to go buy my food and my water, and then I can control you and I can do this, but when you can find out, and I said, so that's why I was big on school gardens and school farms, is not because that everyone's going to be a farmer. It's just so, and that goes back to the World War II generation, my parents, of like, waste not, want not. And that's the conservative part in me. At the same time, that's it takes a village to raise a child, because I am your child. Thank you for raising me. So I will leave it at that.
Yeah, Cynthia.
Oh, I just want to come into something that, I mentioned a long time I was studying Japanese, and one of them was watching anime. And one of the things that was really interesting is how in Japanese, at least according to the anime I watched, how they dealt with picky eaters. And, in America, it's like, you got to eat your food because there's starving children in Africa who want to eat it or something like that. Where in Japan, what they did, or at least they showed in the anime, they take the kid who didn't like food, like one of them was carrots, and they would take them to a farm where it was grown. And they would help them do it. And then they got to eat the fresh stuff that was just picked. And they were showing how this was made with love. So
that's when we talk on tomorrow, I appreciate that, because my connection is with Japan, and that's what it was when the kids grew their own food, they got to taste it in the classroom. So kids would steal from other kids, but I said, you guys are stealing each other's food in the garden. Like, how cool is that? And they're like, that's because if you can't feed up, because I couldn't teach in the classroom without feeding their minds. That's so well there. And the picky eater, what happened was the last time I substitute taught in LA was I seen all these apples, and I'm a struggling artist. Like, I literally, like, you give me $20, I'm going to stretch that out. And so I took their apples that they didn't want, and I took the milk that they didn't want, and I drank the milk in class. And then I told the kids, so half the class is not even listening to me. So I said, here, how many bites do you think it's going to take me to eat this apple? And then while I'm eating the apple, some of the kids started listening. And then while I was eating the apple, I started talking. It's that movie with Robert De Niro of, Brad Pitt. It is, I'll get it. Excuse me, I got so excited with you guys. Sleepers, the movie Sleepers. The priest talked to the kids when he was playing basketball. So when I was doing garden work with the kids digging weeds, I would give I give leadership lessons. But anyways, back on track. So the kids, when they got to grow their own food, they got to feel their own empowerment, that they got to do that. So then what happened was they didn't waste the food. Anyway, so I'm eating this apple, and I explained how the apple's an earth, and that only 8% of it's farmable. And they're like, what? I go, see the skin of the apple? That's called soil. And then I'm still eating the apple, right? And then I go through the whole process, right? And they go, wow. I go, that's just to get the soil to grow the apple. Now the apple I'm eating got grafted. And anyways, I explained the whole part of grafting. I said, it takes about 8 years to get this apple. And they went, 8 years. I said, yeah, and you just threw it away. That's why I'll take that apple. And then they went, and they all took their apples back.
Nice, well done.
Peter, can I just come in?
Thanks for listening.
Nasha has a sign up you may not know, which means raise hand. And I was trying to unmute her because that means she wants to say something, and it hasn't worked. But I just wanted you to alert that she wanted to say something. Nasha, you may be able to unmute yourself. I keep trying to send you the signal that asks you to unmute. So I don't know if she's given up. Anyway, let me try again. Just wanted you to know that. And I'm trying again to unmute her.
Well, Nikki, why don't you come in? Because you're on the sort of the same system. So, Mary, you've got to unmute Nikki.
I'm trying. No, she can do it herself.
Should I go look for it?
Oh, now Nasha's managed it.
Okay. That's not just in, that's just.
Nasha, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I can hear everything going on. I couldn't unmute myself. I'm trying to be clever. This technology fails me sometimes. I was trying to do this on my phone because my computer's died. I just wanted really just to say hello for now and
Okay.
to continue a conversation with you and Mary later when we finish your session.
Do you want to come in, Nikki?
Hello.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's all technically complicated, but no, I haven't particularly got anything to say. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Well, I guess we're ending there. I don't. Anyway, thank you for this. I'll go first in ending. I guess I'm still struggling to see where ahead with these things. But yeah, I'm very determined to put it together in a new way. I think that's my job at this time. You want to go next, Nikki? Just signing out, I guess we could call it that. Oh, and I'm Peter, and I'm in Norfolk, England.
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm in Wimbledon, London. I got, it's only a silly, irrelevant comment just to do with that concept, waste not, want not. I'm glad to hear that was in wherever that is. Johnny, I think, so it's America as well, because it always mystifies me. That was in my family. My mother clearly got it from her mother. My mother gave it to me. How come nobody gave it to the next generation? It's always been a mystery to me that was just lost. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Vic?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm touched by a lot of things that are said, a lot to think about. And I'm just really, I'm grateful that I'll use the word authentic, that can come to this place and hear the authentic voice of people. Because, we all know about persona and authority and everything else. And so thank you all for being authentic, and I'm grateful for that. I'm Vic. I'm in Abbotsford, British Columbia, and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.
Johnny?
Hello, Johnny Abla, Los Angeles, California. Victor, I really appreciate what you said. I guess what I'm trying to get at is what everyone's saying on this group is things that I want to say, but not knowing how to articulate it in a sophisticated way. So thank you. I feel connected.
Okay. Nasha? Can you unmute to sign out? Maybe. Anyway, come in if you want to. Stacy?
Well, I was only here for half a session and I got so much out of it. I can't wait to see the whole thing on YouTube. I'm in Las Vegas and I'm checking out. Sorry for being tardy and sorry for not muting when I came in.
Okay. Cynthia?
Hi, I'm Cynthia. I'm in Kankakee. There's been a lot in my mind's got a lot going on, but I was thinking about something in terms of um, I think that possibly one thing that seems to be very important is the concept of authority, particularly when we're exercising. I mean, if you're in a position where you're struggling, I mean, it's a different position where, you know, if for some reason you've got authority, whether it comes the way we're talking about through our accomplishments, or I would say maybe illegitimately when you're gaining authority by consciously pushing others down. And I think that, I don't know, there seems to be something, and one thing I really liked was the whole concept of, you know, transparency on the part of the provider, and this whole concept of recognizing, you know, the limits. I don't know, I'm not articulating this well, but sort of particularly if you're in the position where you do have power and authority, and trying to be humble about it and know your truth line, and that makes, I think that makes a huge difference. And like, you know, realizing if we're dealing something with blacks, well, I'm white, I have very limited, I mean, my position is somewhere where, you know, as a listener, and recognizing where I'm given authority for no other reason than I'm white, which happens.
Yep. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm from Eugene, Oregon, and I'd like to sign off with a fact, which is the reminder that free school breakfasts in America were started by the Black Panthers because they knew that in order for their children to have access to authority, they had to eat enough to pay attention in class. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Mary in England?
When you said that you were wanting to connect therapy more closely to politics, that has got stuck in my mind, and that's what I've been chewing over and thinking about. It seems absolutely vital, I think, at the moment, that the realm of politics, and particularly human rights, which is moving front and center of everything, needs some therapy for us all to be able to communicate properly within that world. So yeah, an interesting thought. Thank you very much.
Okay,
I'm Mary from south of England.
Yeah, Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary in Rosemary Beach, and I wanted to share a little thing that happened, which was I just started in a dream group, and I shared my group, which is, my heart beats fast to admit what my dream was, but I was in the basement of the White House with Mr. Trump on a fairly equal power basis. Right? And when I shared this dream, the first stage is the participants speak as if it was their dream. And it's about half people of color. And they had a fear, imagining it was their dream, that I didn't have at all. And it was so revealing to me about unconscious white privilege that I never could have noticed in that dream if I hadn't heard the real fear and inequality that was in the people of color. No, all therapists. But anyway, their feeling about that dream, I thought that was very revealing.
Okay. Well,
About the authority of whiteness, in other words. Just,
yeah.
you know. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to keep working on this theme and get your input, because I know we got a long way to go, but we got some to offer. Thank you. Okay.
Remember not to leave, Peter.
Yeah, I will. Okay. Well, I'll
Bye,
see
everyone.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.